if you're open to that, send my message.
I just had a query. And a very sort of that email, is this one being dodgy?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
My view,
Or you will be, I've just moved it around.
I don't mind not being in view. Oh, we'll just start in a couple of minutes, if that's okay.
Oh,
Vicky's.
yeah, she's not on this committee.
Oh, well, that's better, isn't it? Okay. Yeah, good evening. Sandwich Tollbridge Finance Committee. We can start. First of all, are there any apologies?
Yes, there are, Chair. So Councillor Black has a travel commitment, Councillor P. Carter a mayoral commitment, and Councillor D. Carter a mayor's commitment.
Moving on to agenda item 2, do we have any declarations of disclosures of continuing interests? Any items on tonight's agenda for anybody? Thank you. Agenda item 3, the minutes from the previous meeting on the 19th of June. Are there included as attachment 1 in the pack? Are there any comments from anyone before we look to approve them? Yes, Councillor Anderson.
Yes, I did, under the minutes, at 06/24, stop 6, I did suggest that the application form for grants should indicate give advice or guidance, but I would prefer it to be a word really for many of the answers on the form. And I remember saying that at the meeting, but it hasn't been minuted. And there are 1 or 2 other items that are mentioned in that minute, which I don't think have been absorbed by the current proposal. So, my point is about the minutes, obviously, that I would like to see that grant about, because it's very common in grant application forms to have an indication of how many words is the maximum for particular bits of the form. And that in itself is a change, because it's much easier to write at left than it is to write with the to the point. And I think that's important. Professionalism. So that could be part of it.
Thank you for
Because
that.
I remember saying,
I can remember it was exactly and I think in terms of the actual content of what's presented, they can pick those up when we get to that. Okay, so subject to that additional item being included in this, are there any other comments? If not, would someone like to propose the next? Second. Yep, vote. Thank you. We got included in the pack the action log, so there's one action that's outstanding that's been brought forward from previous meetings. And that action relates to the policy and criteria for the award of grants. That will be included in the agenda item, tonight under item 8. Agenda item 4, do we have any members of the public wanting to make representations this evening?
No question.
Moving on to agenda item 5. This is the terms of reference for the Finance Committee. These were discussed at the STBF annual meeting on the 17th of June, and along with standing orders. The standing orders, it was agreed at that meeting that the town clerk would review and align this set of STBF standing orders to set standing orders for the STC, and then circulate an updated version to members of the committee for comment. So that's still in train. And then this was about giving the terms of reference. We agreed to refer to this meeting, which we're doing now, to particularly around agreeing the levels of delegation for this committee. And this picked up on the point that the STBF itself meets quarterly rather than monthly. It's about making sure that we have the right level of delegations here, and then this would then have to go back to STBF final approval. So if I could open up the comments first from members, particularly on the question of whether the terms of reference is sufficient in detail and scope to enable us to make to perform the role that we're required to do at this committee. And that's really about bridging the gap between this monthly meeting and the report of the STBF. Comments on the actual terms of reference.
Yeah, would it be helpful if I did a favour like this to make sure that the committee covers more ground, just for kind of a systematic approach?
I'm happy with that as well.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, a bit concerned about it. I'm not sure it's making all the right part, but I thought they could give out grants to individuals.
Can you say that again?
I thought the Seven Torbridge funds, it's like we've had, Girl Guides or Scouts go to Jamboree, so we actually sponsor parts, they have to raise that, like £5,000-6,000 go to Jamboree, and sometimes we donate a small amount to their fundraising. So I think, does that mean we can't do that anymore? Or the Scout Association or the Guides Association have to ask for their funds?
Okay, so that relates to the grant awards, is that right?
Yes.
We'll pick that up when we come to that agenda item. So it does say explicitly the individuals are not included, so we'll discuss this when we get to that agenda item. But in regards to terms of reference, Colin?
I'm just wondering, because this committee, like FGP, it's more about more detailed scrutiny and ability to look in more depth at finances, budgets, etc. Whereas obviously the trustee as a whole is responsible for finances and financial liability, etc. So I just wondered, under decision delegated power, to consider the management and control of finances, whether that should just say to consider in depth the management and control of finances.
Any counter views? I'm happy with that. In more detail, whatever we want to frame it.
It's not a big point, but it's just trying to separate the role of this committee from the overall
STBF
role of STBF.
Okay. Any other comments on the terms of reference?
I'm still a bit worried about there being no mention of car keys for the museum. So obviously,
So we're just looking at the finance committee aspect at the moment. Yeah.
So I assume, I assume in terms of it, and it's interesting because they are included here, but I assume that they will be discussed at the museum and archives.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Museum and Archives Committee does still have a role to play deciding on its own terms of reference.
It will be invited to comment, yes, yes.
Any other comments on the terms of reference for this meeting?
Well, it does say committees do not have individual budgets, are advisory and do not have powers to enact unless resolved. I can understand that, but I think, things, for me, I would like to understand what the budget is for the museum, how much the museum costs us and so forth. And, I think it would be helpful to the museum committee to understand exactly what their budget is so that they can bring things forward as a
Again, this is something that obviously we've only got a museum coordinator and the RFO, so it is a capacity issue at the moment. We are working on things like this, and obviously with the new finance system, that is going to make it, more, come forward quicker. But I can't promise that that'll be ready for the next meeting because that's only next week.
I think those are more issues for the business plan, what's the value of our services, etc.
Well, yeah, and I think in terms of applying for grants from other bodies to be able to say, we have a museum here, it costs us 133,000 a year or whatever it costs us to run it, and we need X amount of money.
We were coordinated, does it like all grants, doesn't it, on behalf of the museum, which had body of the grant, with the Wheels of Time exhibition and these other exhibitions, so that is part of the private grant.
Yeah, understand that, but I think if she knew what the total cost of the museum was, it would be useful
I don't think
when
that's,
she's applying.
I think that's up to the committee, not to be, not the, I think it's up to the museum committee's responsibility.
Well, that's why I'm asking for the budget for the museum, committee.
So my observation would be that that is a museum archives committee rather than this. Well, we can't concerned about that committee, so if that's some way that can take them there.
You need the RFOs for that, don't you? Don't be banging it back here. You need to ask a question of the RFO, she's the one who will do this.
But there's also unquantifiable costs in there because the museum is run by volunteers. If we had to pay them, it would cost them a lot more.
If that passed, we will make an application to
Yeah.
quality hours as part of the income contribution.
So we agree
So-
in terms of that, so
The point I was picking up to review all budgets is part of the remit here, and I suggest such as use the budget for the museum.
which picks up on the point earlier about the deep analysis of the information. Financial information, so we can read that into the objectives that we're going to present regarding the business as well. Yes, Ross.
Specifically, the point that I was going to come to is that we need an overall understanding of the costs involved. Each individual one is the data.
So would that be similar to the finance and general purposes committee? We need to have a more detailed analysis of the budgets for the STDF at some point, be it twice a year or other periods. Is that the last one? More detailed analysis of the budgets that are under the STDF.
I would expect that to be our job to some extent.
Yeah.
But not. It's a question, in my view, I'm not sure if this is also Councillor Greenaway. In my view, it's just something we should be informed about and aware of. It touches on your work in the SDC working group as well. So there's But as I say, for me, it's something that we should be aware of as part of the overall picture.
I think there's a perception in the town that the Toll Bridge Fund has got a whole heap of money and it should be spending it. And it's important therefore that we understand what the budget is from the Toll Bridge Fund and how it's been apportionated and what things are actually costing. And it's different from the deep dive, which is just basically balancing checks that we're doing things properly.
So in terms of taking this forward, there's an opportunity to sit down and see what we might be able to do. Otherwise, I'm happy to do that and be involved in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But first, if I could have your output documents, that would be helpful as a reference point. Okay. So if we take that some action and we look to come back, in time, hopefully for the next meeting, if not, certainly by so, that's fine, yeah, once it's take one to use.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Based on that action we'll take forward, is anyone willing to propose that it's in terms of reference? Propose. Second. Second. No, I think I will. So we do have enough time, because the next time the STDF will meet will be.
And after the, I think it is after the finance committee, because it sets towards the end of September.
Yes, so we should have time to then take a final version to the STDF. Yeah. Okay. Right, so we now move on to agenda item 6. There's a number of payment schedules to approve. There's also a number of financial budget variances and bank reconciliations. We've also been asked to receive the period report for June 2024. So I was going to suggest if the group is happy that we take first of all the payment schedules on block, take any comments on them, and then go through them on block. And as we go through those comments, in terms of payment schedules, it's attachments 3A to 3D. Has anybody got any comments to raise on those?
On attachment 3E, there is a payment of £270 to the rights of way. I'm nominated as the rights of way outside body. I don't know what that payment is for. Sure. I don't know who it's to.
Keep getting council. Kent County, isn't it? It's the Kent County Council, the right of way officer. They generally have a meeting, I think it's COVID, they used to have an annual meeting. And then they delegate people from the parish to meet up, to explain all the, about reporting blocked footpaths, overgrown footpaths, damaged footpaths. But at the moment, it's all sort of 2 couple of years.
Well, as the town clerk knows, I've written to the rights of way officer at Kent County Council.
So I'll have to take this back to the RFO, and what I would say to the committee members is what I said on the Human Resources Committee. If you've got any specific questions, can you please raise them with me before the meeting, because then I've got an opportunity to ask that of the officer and get, hopefully the answer.
There's a fair point, particularly with the financial documents we had at this meeting, because if the finance minister generated these, it's important that any questions in terms of specific detail are raised beforehand, because it's not, it's unfair to expect everyone to have no answers to all of them. And so hopefully we can accept these payment schedules with
Yes,
an action.
well, I can send Karen a message and just find out. Apologies, I shouldn't have raised it.
There's just one that's a personal one for me. attachment 3I, halfway down the page, it says Councillor Wiles and Miss Harpo. It was nothing, the hiring of the courtroom was nothing to do with me or the council. It's just as a private citizen. That can be amended.
Sort of jumped into the second set, but that's fine.
No, sorry.
No, that's all right.
No,
That's
I had a couple earlier on, but
Yeah.
given what you said, I won't raise them now.
Any other comments on attachments 3A to 3D? If not, is somebody's happy to propose them? Anybody? Second round and vote. Okay. So the second set is the financial budget variances and bank reconciliations. And they are documents 3E to 3J. We'll take one comment from Councillor Wiles, if there are any comments at all. If not, somebody's happy to propose them.
So there's the car park, half bit at the back. Since they've done the doctor's solution, there's a massive great empty space, isn't it? I often wonder whether we could get a consultant just to look at it so we can get some extra spaces in there to raise more revenue.
Okay, so I think that's a fair point. Jeff, I think that'll be worth long property. As one of them.
Kind of, we might get another 8 spaces in there.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other comments?
The property manager will have an annual target for additional revenue.
Okay, somebody else to propose these?
I propose.
Second, Councillor Bradbury, vote. And the final papers is the Court of Cheviot report for June 2024. We've been asked to receive those. Any comments on this? Anybody else?
Because I have raised regularly where I'm not getting festivity as a rate of return. And I have to say, I have a portfolio, and I looked at it just before the meeting. And my portfolio, I know people say, oh, but the Cheviot investments are all low risk. Well, mine is medium low risk, and it's invested entirely, because I'm consistent point, in ethical investments, which are not supposed to be particularly good as far as returns are concerned. And it is actually returning at the moment 2.5%, which is better than the 2%. So I think there are grounds for querying this particular company. There may be exit penalties, it may be too much emphasis to try and change it. We're clearly not losing an enormous amount. We're getting a somewhat lower return. But what is happening, and of course these figures are extremely useful, is the drawdown that has been varying enormously from year to year. Since 2009, when it was started, as I imagine, to run this portfolio. It's just extraordinary, that variation. And they've advised us that we should be running at 3.5% to 4%. And almost always, but not always, it's been significantly more. And once or twice, 2 years in particular, 2020 and 2022, it was over 10%.
Well, that was exactly my observation of this report, was exactly that point.
Perhaps we should have a word and ask us, yeah, a high risk, because I'm a trustee of another charity, and they just joined with Quilter Cheviot, and they're very pleased with their results. So it depends whether I think you should ask them to take a slightly higher risk with some of the share.
So I think
I'm
we,
not suggesting, because my one's at really low, and there are 3 categories above.
I know we did try the hand a bit with ethical policies and what we did, a couple of years
Yes, I
ago.
know, but mine was.
That's what I'm just saying, if we can get them to come here, we could ask them to raise our risk level.
so we've already got that logged as an action through us TVF itself,
Yeah.
and I believe it's been progress to.
Yes.
We potentially are going to look at it being a Zoom meeting, if I recall right, conversations, and may not be face to face, but yes, it's definitely, and it was off the back of your suggestion, Jeff, that we would have a discussion with them about what's a higher risk.
I mean, might be a bit share us, please, but that's some people want to say, oh, we don't want armaments companies, you know what I mean? It's very difficult sometimes.
So I think in terms of, we raise this in every meeting we have around this report, it is down as an action for the town clerk to progress, so we will get that opportunity in due course. So my observation was the same as yours, Claire. It was around the majority, the vast majority of the years, the drawdown has been well above the level that's indicated as safe. But I'm not sure that you have any opportunity to be any otherwise in terms of what we're trying to manage as a council, that, we could investigate that through the property manager in time, and that would be helpful.
We've got the border, wouldn't it, for £100,000, isn't it? I mean, you just don't know this whole building.
Yeah.
It's expensive, we had to put a new thing through here years ago, that costs a fortune as well. And it's not allowed for, is it? It's something you think, oh, God, we've got a new being, it's just got to go and do it, or something else.
I mean, it's a reminder as well that the Torbridge Fund is not just this portfolio, it's the assets as well. So, we need a proper strategic approach to say, do we invest in assets rather than shares or paintings or wine or whatever it might be? Rather than just
Maybe the wine is though.
rather than just
In the second.
going along the same old way.
Can I just make a comment that always kind of concerns me when I look at this? And if we look at page 11 and 12 of the report, you'll see that in the month they've done a lot of transactions. They've purchased over £100,000 worth of shares, and they've sold £73,000 worth of shares. So in the month, they basically turned over 10% of the value of the portfolio, and hidden within these purchase and sales are transaction costs and commissions. And what worries me is that when you look at these reports, they're churning it over every month to their own benefit. Whereas what we would look, and what I would have thought in most portfolios, out of portfolio too, we go in for long-term stuff and we're not chopping and changing every month. And that's where these people, in my opinion, are not working in our best interest.
So we'll have an opportunity to express all of those views.
That's how they make money, though, isn't it?
That's how they make money.
Well, how are they going to make money? We don't want to take the commission off our.
They take a commission as well,
Yeah.
but this is an additional transaction.
All companies do that, don't they?
No, mine doesn't.
Yeah, but
Mine doesn't charge. I pay them a standard amount. And
what for buying and selling?
I think Councillor Breed's made a good point. You look at the sales, Shell, AstraZeneca, Unilever, Persimmon. I mean, these are all blue chip shares. Why would they be selling them?
well, perhaps because they're as high as they think they'll go. But, we need to know.
I mean, Persimmon is about to be a house building boom. Their shares are likely to go up.
churning, that's the mean, isn't it?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
I think we have to deal with it as a portfolio level. We can't really go back every month with a list of questions, why did you sell this and why did you sell that. I think we need to have that conversation with regards the risk that we're attaching to it, the exclusions we want in relation to our portfolio, and then let's see what it's saying. Okay, any other comments? No? So in terms of the reports, the financial statements of providers, there are two recommendations to put to the committee, and that's the committee receives the updated terms of reference from quarter PDFs, and secondly, that the committee receives a breakdown of the performance figures in annual report for us. And we have to propose we see both of these.
Yeah.
Second. Jeff. So we've got one more item next to it. Stay with me.
I've done this one.
Yeah, so agenda item 7 on, hopefully we don't need to discuss the report on the Advantage Finance software because we had that information in the previous meeting. Are we happy to receive and note the report?
Seconded.
Okay. And then the final item, probably a substantial one, hopefully we'll get helpful input in terms of the documents that have been provided. So we've got so the substantial item is relates to the action that we had at the last meeting, which was to generate a grants process review, and that's the aim has been undertaken by the Town Clerk, Councillor Wiles and myself. We've got 3 documents shared for this meeting, and it's really to secure input on those documents. I think made some comments against documents, so maybe we should go through each of the documents one by one. But I feel that the Town Clerk may introduce it first.
Thank you. Yes, so we, as the chair said, we've been working on some documents, and it is the proposal to seek comments and feedback from this committee on the review of the criteria and the policy for the Tilbridge Fund grants process. There's an open funding process that has been operating until now that gives access to the opportunity to apply for funding all year round. The budget's discussed each year in November, and it's set for the ensuing fiscal year from April. The trustee will mindful this year that the budget for 24-25 of £10,000 should be allocated over 2 tranches of funding applications. The trustee awarded £6,500 in March 2024, which was the first tranche, and it was suggested that the next round of funding should be considered later in the year, September or October this year. The committee will now consider updating the criteria and policy for Tilbridge Fund grants and review the process involved. We have worked on drafting these documents to update the criteria and policy for debate, and there is also a draft evaluation form attached to the report for consideration. I do know from the RFO as well that there has been an evaluation process previously, so I do actually have that form that she had been using previously. So if members are happy, I could pass you around a copy of that so that you can have that to look at as well. But this is just grants feedback form that has been operated previously. Obviously, we've got the evaluation form that I've drafted for you as well. It's just really for information so you can see what's been operated previously. Thank you.
Okay. So, as I say, we've got 3 documents that can deal with each one individually. And the first one is the criteria for grant applications. So that's open up to take any comments on the criteria that's been drafted.
Is that the one I was talking about?
Yes.
Because I mean, if it's a Girl Guide, or Scout, an national jamboree, or international jamboree, I mean, I think it's good for the whole town. But if she applies through the Girl Guide, that's a national organisation, or the Scouts, isn't it? So really, I'm not quite sure how that goes for individuals.
Can I ask Councillor Miles in terms of this document?
I don't know what worries me, it's the Scouts and the Girl Guide, if they go to national jamboree, and they have to raise a lot of money individually.
The document makes it clear that only organisations can apply. So if it was an individual scout or a Girl Guide, they would have to do it through their organisation.
They are a sandwich guide also.
So there is value for individuals to make an application via their organisation, as long as the organisation meets the criteria of eligible grant application.
I think I have to say, if it was an individual, you'd have to ask what benefit that gives to the wider community.
But for Scouts, so it means it reflects back on sandwich Scouts and Guide, and encourage more youngsters to join the organisation.
That could be a case you could argue at the
Yeah.
application stage.
Yes, I don't know if we finish with that way, because, I mean, it's an important one, because, not all funding bodies exclude the possibility of funding. But most do, and we're obviously copying that with any kind of organisation. But I just wanted to make the point that you say in each case the applicant must include a copy of the constitution, etc., a copy of their latest AGM minutes. Well, it's not the case necessarily that organisations that are likely to apply to English Fund are actually membership organisations. So I don't think, so they won't have had an AGM, and have no reason to have an AGM. So I think we need to rework that. A copy of their latest AGM minutes if they are a membership. Because there are many organisations that are not.
No, it's a fair point. I think after has been formally adopted by its members, brackets, if it is a membership organisation, close bracket.
And that, yes, also made another point, and I'm not quite sure what it is. Yes, you say no draft should be made to individuals. You're quite clear on that. But you also say somewhere, yes, that it should not, yes, you say grants will not be offered to cover revenue funding, including the running costs and routine maintenance of buildings and equipment. And again, I mean, that's an exclusion which is common, but not necessary. I mean, some funding bodies do fund core costs on the grounds that if they didn't fund core costs, organisations that they want to see survive will fail. And I don't see why you've decided not to fund core costs, because there may well be sandwich organisations that if they don't get £1,000 to cover, their rent or whatever it is that they need to cover their electricity, they're going to fail, and that would not be a good idea for sandwiches.
It's on the same point.
Yes.
I think it's a viability issue.
An organisation that needs to come to a grant for expenditure. So what happens when they use the grant? The risk is there that you become embroiled in a situation where they become dependent on it. I think that's the usual reason for excluding something which is purely routine costs. Now, I know that some organisations could wrap up routine costs in quite a project.
There are, I have to say, bodies that will fund core costs.
Yeah.
But they'll do it for a limited time with the expectation that you will find some other way of doing whatever the issue is.
So I'll come back to Councillor Wiles. If Councillor Fenton is, I'll take it first, it's on the same subject.
Well, it's interesting, I was involved in Sandwich Club for 18 years, and very often maintenance costs, you know, well, I think went on equipment and running this building, insurance, everything else. But when it comes to maintenance, yeah, that was a real struggle. So we did come here, and then when you apply for Dover District and Kent County Council, they say, oh, what do you get for town? They do all match funding, don't they? So I think there should be exceptions. It shouldn't be rock solid with no, but I think it should be exceptions. You know, if it were for the town council and Tollbridge Fund, the youth club was probably shut about 30 years ago.
So Councillor Wiles, I ask a question for you.
Yeah.
Come back as well. Was this not carried forward? What was the previous part of the criteria? You haven't invented this as a new
Yeah, I think so.
restriction. It was long-standing in the previous criteria, so I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, I think my point on that would be, if we're funding revenue, we might fund it one year, the next year we don't. So the organisation either becomes unviable or it has to get funding elsewhere. I think any organisation that's seeking grants for day-to-day expenditure
I mean, this
is not a viable organisation.
This was for building maintenance,
Well,
like re-roofing the youth club.
yeah, maintenance,
There was nothing that was budgeted for.
you could call that as a capital cost, can't you?
An exceptional.
It's a capital cost. I'm just trying to find the bit where it says about,
When it's
It's
other
other
conditions
conditions of the grant, bullet number 3.
well, why don't we just change that to say, grants will not generally be offered to cover revenue funding?
Yes.
You know, just to say, we'll consider it as an exception, but,
It's just a bit common sense, it's not.
yeah.
I mean, it will never be a large amount of money,
No.
but the whole point about match funding as well is important.
Yeah, I prefer to be very clear on this bullet, that we might want to put in something about an exceptional circumstance. So for example, routine maintenance would not extend to an exceptional circumstance of
It's doing all busy all the time, he was actually doing like from small, we had to link it with projects in France and in Belgium to get money for Sandwich Youth Club, well, the boxing club is that extension there. So it didn't have the match funding.
I prefer to expand it to say exceptional circumstances relating to maintenance of buildings will be considered. Would that be okay? Rather than if you start with general, then that means every time you mediate from that. Would that be acceptable?
Depends what you mean by maintenance. If it's a one-off roof repair, to me, that's a capital project.
Okay.
And if it's just, you know, annual replacing the light bulbs,
Possibly painting is different, isn't it?
yeah. Regular painting, it's different.
So could we just, can I suggest then we can just extend that, say this does not exclude project like capital, one-off capital projects. Yeah. Okay. Any more comments on the criteria?
I think it's important to make it clear that the blurb at the beginning where it says any surplus arising, that's the surplus after all of the running costs of the charity have been dealt with and the management and maintenance of its assets have been dealt with. So it's pure surplus.
Yeah. Okay. We have to move on to the second document, which is attachment 5, that's the grant application form.
Yeah. Well, this is where I would
Yes.
like, the indications and the restricted project to be so implemented.
Yep.
And then what is the main purpose of the organisation? Perhaps 250 or something. 300. I mean, you need to think. It is a lot, but it's still, I mean, lots of people want to write over.
Yeah.
And it's much easier to write at length than it is to write.
So first, the brief description of the project. So what we should, I think we probably need to say something like no more than. Maximum, yes. Yeah. 150 words. Yeah.
Same for organisation, purpose of organisation. You can't describe your organisation in 50 words.
Oh, yeah. That one.
Main purpose of your.
Then you mentioned another one that was 250, which section now?
Well, description of the project.
Yes, obviously on the page.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought in one where it was a maximum of 300 words. It's enough.
I would say 50 words for both of those.
50.
For brief description of project, and what is the main purpose of your organisation? Surely you can describe it.
Yeah, we've done that. Yeah, we're over the page now. Okay. So I think on pick up on Claire's indication around this, I think 250 for each of those two boxes would be reasonable. That's the description of the project, and that's what your range is. Yeah. To what extent will this project event support? Yeah. So 250 again, we'll just keep it consistent. And then the final box the same as well.
Should there be a limit on how many times they can apply for a grant? Should it be a seat, say that's not 3 times?
And then you made that point available, and that's why in here it does come up as the final set of questions, Jenny, which is have you received a grant within the last 3 years? And then to provide that information, I think that becomes part of the process of assessing each one. Right.
Some of the organisations automatically think they're going to get a grant, then they get nasty about it.
It's called dependency.
Yeah, it's not right though, is it? It's sometimes to start up to an organisation, isn't it? It's fresh. Yeah, they should be generating enough income by then.
Can we move on to, I didn't understand how the project event plan. This question about if the project is land or property related, what is the nature of the interest? I mean, we're talking very small sums of money. I mean, the total sum is never going to have more than £10,000 to spend between a whole bunch of some of them. So what do you expect? What are you expecting them to be buying?
I think this was just a box that was carried forward from the last. But yeah, I mean, let's say it was a project to open a pop-up advice centre or something. It could be, they had to take on a lease or a tenancy.
Or it could, for example, be a small plot of land that's going to be used, for example, for biodiversity. So that could be just a small house.
Maybe fish and chips was really tasty. We don't. Make you feel that's what it is.
So any other comments on that document? And a lot of the remaining detail is actually carried forward in terms of the previous.
Yes, and it's wrong. There's reference to the Disability Discrimination Act 1995, and they're supposed to achieve some stuff about it as well. And that act was entirely replaced by the Equality Act in 2010. So I think you need to go through all this legislation to make certain that they're still in operation. Because I know that at least one that isn't.
The town clerk.
That will take into action.
I'm just wondering on,
Because it does actually say somewhere, there's a question, whether you take account of disability discrimination. That's not in the system.
I'm just wondering on Councillor Franklin's point whether there should just be a separate box. It says, have you received a grant within the last 3 years? Before that, perhaps, have you applied for a grant within the last 3 years? Because then you can see.
So that's an additional box, yeah.
An additional box.
Can I say, in terms of all of this about children and vulnerable adults, there is the disclosure in that diary service, and people who are working with those should be certified and cleared by the disclosure diary service.
There's 2 levels. There's basic and then there's
Enhanced.
yes. You have to decide which one you want.
I had that, when I put in the book, I think it's the other one, that's when it came on as well.
Yeah.
They didn't like it, because you had to put an association, so you would say, that's what the process, that's what the other one was.
Because that was that notorious coach.
Okay, we have to move on to the process itself. So this was picking up on the point that what we wanted to do was improve the vetting of applications. It also recognises the request that we actually manage the process rather than allow the application to manage us. So this was to reduce the 2 rounds of applications and awards each year. That's all covered in this document, and the question is whether it's sufficient in terms of how it's been explained.
I think it makes sense. And then we've said repeatedly with too many applications come here, which are not ready to be looked at.
Yeah.
And we need a better pre-vetting process.
Because don't forget, as soon as we, depending on when we adopt these, we are actually moving into the next round of review in the autumn. We only have 3,500 of the 10,000 left to allocate. So it is only quite a small sum, so I'm not sure where we are with it's.
We've got one. The town council like it. I just think that in Barbers at the market, it looks terrible.
I think we probably get enough help from the STDF.
Conflict of interest.
Okay, so there's no comments on the process itself. We move to the recommendations. So there are actually 3 recommendations to go through. First is that the committee approve the draft criteria policy for the grants, subject to the actions identified. If somebody wants to propose accepting including that. Councillor Green, seconded by Councillor Franklin. And we can vote. Second recommendation is that the committee agrees to process the TBF grant applications, including an evaluation process to monitor the outcomes and track the sustainability of groups, events, projects. Propose that. Councillor Green, second. Councillor Pennington, approve. The final one is the committee recommended adoption of the revised criteria, policy and associated documentation by the trustee. Councillor Green, Councillor Pennington, all in agreement. So the intention is to take this to the next, which is in September. Yes. Does that give enough time to implement it this year, or are we going to need to implement it for the next financial year?
It's approved. if it's approved. 'Cause I think the anticipation was that the application that we have would be heard at the next trustee Topic Fund meeting.
Right.
So I don't know if the applicant, well, it depends on really how many applications we've got, I think.
By then, yes.
To be fair to the person that's already applied, maybe we could bring something next year.
Yeah, I think my personal preference is it's for next year we adopt this to give enough time for those that typically apply, have opportunity to reflect on the guidance. So they can only listen to one. Okay, right, so thank you very much. Moving on to the last agenda item, which is date and time of the next meeting, and that's Wednesday, the 18th of September. And again, it follows the FNGP meeting, so it'll be in this room. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.